Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham here on a Wednesday afternoon, just a couple of days away from the UVA Baseball Super Regional starting with Kansas State. That is Friday night at 7 o'clock, game one. Game two scheduled for Saturday at 3 o'clock, game three, if necessary, Sunday at 3 o'clock. We'll talk about that. I'll talk about that a little bit more coming up here in the podcast. I had promised last week a follow-up podcast on the Tony Bennett coaching contract news, and then I got delayed because I got some more public records information back from the University of Virginia. It led to more questions for me, and then I had to wait to get those questions answered. So we'll talk about that a little bit later too. Um, the news came out of left field today that it's kind of, to be honest, kind of pissed me off. About the naming of a new color commentator for UVA football radio broadcast. Uh, Ahmad Hawkins somehow got the job. He's going to be the lead color analyst on UVA football broadcast, according to a press release sent out by the UVA athletics department today. He's also going to take a lead role on the Virginia Farm Bureau Insurance Cavalier Minute, and also radio features on the Virginia Radio Sports Network. Glowing quote from the general manager of Virginia Sports Properties, Jen Madden, about what a great guy Ahmad is. He's going to join John Freeman, who will be going into his fourth season as the football play-by-play guy. John does basketball as well. I'm not sure if he does. I mean, I don't ever listen to these broadcasts, but I don't think he does baseball. I don't listen to them because I'm usually at the games. Former UVA quarterback Matt Shaw will join those two for a select number of games. Select apparently being four from what we were told in the press release, but I like to just be clear on that. So Matt Shaw will be there as I guess a second commentator, second color guy, and then Ahmad will be the lead color guy. And this is Ahmad is going to be only the third guy to have this job in 41 years. Frank Quayle had the job for 29 years. Frank Quayle, man, legendary guy. Tony Covington had it for the last 12 years. Tony Covington, like me and like Ahmad and like Frank Quayle and like Matt Schaub, and like John Freeman, we're all UVA alums. Tony, unlike the others, it's a guy who will speak his mind on things when things aren't going well. And that probably is why he's no longer the color commentator on the football broadcast. Kind of like, Jim Hobgood, good old Jimmy, good old Hobby, he's been doing for a few years, Who's Talking Now with Frank Maloney, another UVA alum. Jim lost his radio broadcast color commentator job for the men's basketball a long time ago, back in the Dave Lato era, because he could speak his mind occasionally on those broadcasts. And, folks at UVA don't like people speaking their minds when they're speaking their minds in a critical way. They don't mind it though when a guy like Ahmad Hawkins will use his platform. And Ahmad has been working with UVA athletics on broadcast for several years with football broadcast. When a guy like him goes out and attacks a guy like me for writing critical articles and makes up lies about what I've written, and the story last year about me writing a column. Ahmad went to Twitter and riled up his Twitter followers because he said I made up a quote that Tony Elliott said. There's video of it. It was in a transcript, and explaining the loss to JMU in the home opener last year. Okay, so he made up something, said I made up something. I called him out on it just to say, hey, I didn't make the quote up. It's right there. Here it is. Here's a link, etc., etc. And instead of apologizing, Ahmad Hawkins riled up his internet mob to come after me. And I found out later that he's done this before to other media people. That's probably why he gets this job with UVA. They're replacing a guy like Tony Covington, who will speak critically about things when necessary regarding UVA and UVA athletics. well, they got a bulldog here. He'll go after people that UVA doesn't like. That would be me. And so, I'm not saying that's they didn't hire him just to go after me, but the fact that he went after someone, um, no doubt is a feather in his cap there, right? So, yeah, this kind of messed up my day. Just realizing that, I mean, I attribute a lot and probably way too much of my success in life to the fact that I was able to attend school at the University of Virginia, graduate from the University of Virginia in 1994. Um, and I've tried to pay it back a little bit over the years. Um, Certainly use a lot of what I learned when I was there to think critically. Um, but I don't know that the what the professors and what other, my fellow students, now fellow alums, what the professors were teaching and what we learned about critical thinking is something that the University of Virginia the University of Virginia as an institution values. Okay. Um, this example here, hiring a guy who to be a voice of UVA. I mean, when you hire a guy to be the color commentator on a sports broadcast, prominent sports broadcast, he is a voice of your university, right? This guy made up lies about me, and he's a voice of this university. And I told them this. I mean, I've written about this publicly several times. I reached out to UVA Athletics to make that point. Hey, this guy made up a lie about me, and you guys are still employing him. They didn't just continue to employ him, they gave him a promotion, right? So that's what they do. UVA as an institution has been blocking for several months efforts by the Daily Progress newspaper over in Charlottesville to get access to the report into the 2022 shootings that led to the deaths of 3 UVA football players. They've been fighting the FOIA request for a while. It's finally going to go to trial later this month. They're not going to go into the night quietly on that, and guarantee you that FOIA requests can be hard to win when you have to go to court to win them. I know this because I've been fighting, Augusta County here in my backyard for several months, and I don't think we're going to win that one, to be honest, when it all comes said and done, over an illegally held secret closed meeting in that Augusta County leaders will be embarrassed by if it gets out, right? That's clearly what's going on there. I pretty much know what's on that tape. Um, UVA leaders are going to be embarrassed when whatever comes out of this report comes out about the shootings, because it's going to be revealed that the student who is going to be on trial next year, finally, 2.5 years later, for the shootings, Christopher Darnell Jones, should have been nowhere near grounds. That university police, university officials basically effed up. And that guy should not have been on grounds. He should not have been on a bus with students. It just happened that, four of them were UVA football players. Mike Collins survived. Lavelle Davis Jr. died. Devin Chandler died. Deshaun Perry died. So UVA doesn't want that to get out because it's going to make them look bad. So they don't want Tony Covington talking about UVA football on the radio in a critical way, because that might make UVA look bad. They'll put Ahmad Hawkins in there and be a bulldog for him, and they're going to fight the Daily Progress. They're going to fight anybody. This is, you talk about sour. I mean, when I say maybe I've been over crediting UVA for my success in life. You know, I was going to be good at something anyway. UVA is where I chose to go to school. Um, now I'm paying it forward because they don't want somebody looking at them. I'm going to keep looking at them, screw it, as far as that goes. So, not happy with this Ahmad Hawkins thing, to say the least. I think UVA should be embarrassed they've got a guy like that representing them. But that's their choice. Congratulations. You've got a guy who leads internet mobs against people who just dare to ask questions, representing you. I'm sure you're proud of that. So good for you. Now that I'm in a pissed off mood, now we'll talk about Tony Bennett's contract. How about we do that? Catching up on some things there. Um, still got another public records request out, so I'm still not 100% done with this story, but the full picture of Tony Bennett's staff is now clear. To catch folks up, if you haven't either read my stories online or watched podcasts, watched or listened to podcasts, I should say, because you might just be listening, you might not be watching on YouTube. Um, Tony Bennett's contract expires on April 30th, 2026. In a 5-year period between 2015 and 2019, he signed 3 extensions. He has not signed an extension in 5 years. One has not been offered to him. UVA made that clear in a FOIA response to me. So they will answer some of their FOIAs, right? On controversial issues, and that being one of them, whether or not Tony Bennett's going to be around after 2 more years. So I then started digging a little further to look into the assistant coaches' contracts. Found out that Ron Sanchez, who had come to UVA with Tony Bennett when Tony got the job in 2009, they were both at Washington State. Tony was the head coach there. Ron Sanchez was his assistant. They had been working together since Dick Bennett had hired both to be on his staff when Dick Bennett was the coach at Washington State from 2003 to 2006. Okay, so Ron Sanchez came across country. Then he left for 5 years to be the head coach at Charlotte. Sanchez then came back last summer. His contract runs through April 30th, 2027. Now, remember, I just said Tony Bennett's contract runs out April 30, 2026. So one contract, a contract of an assistant coach, extends beyond the head coach's contract. That's an interesting anomaly, perhaps, or it's something intentional, and I think we can presume it's something intentional. Also, then, Jason Williford, the other associate head coach on the staff, his contract ends April 30, 2026, just like Tony Bennett's does. Orlando Vandross, a third a full-time assistant on Tony's staff, his contract ends on April 30, 2026. So we've got the head coach contract ends 2026. 2 of his assistants ends 2026. One of the assistants is all the way through 2027. The other 2 full-time assistants, Isaiah Wilkins, Johnny Carpenter, their contracts are actually year to year. They go July 1 to June 30. So I'm told that will be offered contracts and they'll continue on staff for next season. I looked into the secondary staff then, Brad Soderberg, who is part of the Bennett family tree. He coached under Dick Bennett at Wisconsin that far back. Soderberg, his contract actually ended April 30th of 2024. Not sure. I guess I got the impression from when I reached out to the UVA Athletics media folks that he's still around. But the other support guys, then Larry Mangino, he's through also through 2024, excuse me, and then April 30, 2024, and then Isaiah and Johnny are June 30, so effectively just year to year, right? So one other thing I thought I would point out. So okay, so obviously Sanchez is around for a year after Tony. You can say, well, maybe Tony's going to sign a deal in the next 2 years. Maybe he will. Hey, maybe he's just waiting to the end. He did 3 extensions in 5 years, hasn't done one for 5 years. Again, 2 of his full-time assistants have contracts that end when his does. One has a contract that ends a year after his does. There's a reason for that. I don't think it was a mistake on anybody's part. As far as salaries, we've always been led to believe that, in the most recent time that Tony had a chance to rake UVA over the coals for money, which, the reputation of Tony is that that's not the case, that he would never do that. He didn't, as it turns out, 2017 to 2019, he didn't get any more money because he signed a 2015, 2017, 2019 extensions, each of those 3 of those 5 years. The 2017 deal is what gave him $3 million. He did not get more money in 2019. All that did was extend the contract an additional year. But as of 2017, the automatic rollover years had Tony going through 2025 as it was. The 2019 contract simply added the year 2025, 2026 to the deal. So the story that's always floated out there was, well, Tony didn't ask for more money because he wanted the money to go to his assistants. Not the case based on the contracts that I've got access to through the FOIA request. Ron Sanchez left Charlotte as the head coach, making $650,000 a year. He's making $450 at UVA. He took a pay cut to be the assistant coach. If that doesn't also make you think He left the head coaching job willingly. He won 22 games his last year there. He came back to Virginia for less money. That there might be something else motivating him to do that. There you go. Jason Williford, $433,000 is this contract. The speculation online is speculation until you ask a question like I've done. That's all I've done is ask questions and get the answers. But people have been, speculating, writing, intoning, basically reporting as fact for years. That, well, gosh, Williford makes close to $1 million. No way he's leaving. He doesn't make close to him. He didn't even make close to $500,000. Sanchez, not the case. Orlando Vandross, 355. Ronnie Weidman, who is the director of basketball operations, makes 221. Soderberg, who's been with Tony the longest, just because, I mean, he knew Dick Bennett before anybody else except for Tony, right? He makes 200. Isaiah and Johnny Carpenter, 150 each. And then Larry Mangino, 90,000, 96,000, excuse me. So, um, I think we can make myth out of the story that in 2019 Tony refused more money to give the money to his staff. UVA just doesn't pay much to his staff either, at least according to the market forces of college basketball, which are hyper hyper aggressively, let me think of a better word, hyper aggressively overpaid. College sports people, I wrote a column about that. I think I've angered some people writing about how UVA is overpaying its guys. Everybody in college sports is overpaying their coaches. It ain't just UVA. All I know, I've got the UVA numbers, but everybody in college sports is way overpaying their coaches as far as that goes. But I know that's the case with UVA. So the last thing I've got out there is there is a foundation. The Tony Bennett, whenever they send a press release, they being UVA Athletics, sent a press release out about Tony Bennett. They call him the Dean and Markle Foundation, or Dean and Markle Families Foundation head coach of UVA basketball. Um, and I want to, so what a reader asked me to look into, hey, how does that foundation work? What's going on there? So I filed a request for public records on how that foundation works, what it does to provide money to UVA basketball specifically, um, and so I filed that request a week ago. The University of Virginia wrote me back last night to say that they need an additional 7 working days to fulfill that request. So that tells me there's more to the story, perhaps, than I even was thinking. I was thinking I was asking an honest, innocent, very simple question. They had 5 working days to get back to me, and now they need 7 more. So that might be a fun one. We just don't know. But I'll update on that as the word comes back to me. Okay, so pissed off about Ahmad Hawkins. There's the update on Tony Bennett. Now let's talk about the one fun thing we can talk about, and that's baseball. UVA baseball. Feel good story. Jay Woolfolk with that incredible outing on Sunday. Gave up a 2-run homer in the first inning. And, if you watch any UVA baseball this year, Jay was the number 3 starter when the season started, lost that job mid-March, didn't do well in the bullpen after getting demoted. But still, he was the guy from a stuff standpoint to be the one. If Virginia could develop a third starter, he'd have to be the guy. Well, Tony. There's so many Tonys I talk about. Brian O'Connor told reporters last week, and then repeated after the weekend especially after the clinching game with Mississippi State, that he had made the decision that, hey, yeah, Jay needs to be our third starter. We need to get him ready to be our third starter. But that 2-run homer in the first inning kind of was just very much was reminiscent of the issues that Jay's been having as a reliever. He would pitch great. If you watched him for a 1 inning stint. There were a couple of two-plus inning stints. I think there was even one 4 inning relief stint that he had. If you didn't look at stats and you just watched him pitch, man, if he threw 2 or 3 innings, he'd throw 40 pitches. 35 of them were MLB quality, but there'd be a couple that weren't, and one that would be hit to the moon, just like we saw in the first inning on Sunday night. The difference with Sunday night was he took that blow and didn't let it affect the rest of his game. The approach, Brian O'Connor had to be going into that thinking, hey, it gives me 3 or 4 innings, I'm good. I've got other guys in the bullpen. I'll work with them. But middle innings, Jay's still out there, pretty efficient on the pitch count, and it just kept going back out there, and ended up pitching into the ninth inning. He pitched to one batter in the ninth. O'Connor said afterwards he wanted Jay to get the last 3 outs, but the top of the ninth, it was a 3-2 game going into the top of the ninth. Virginia was the visiting team. I hate that rule in NCAA baseball. You play all season long to earn the better seed, and then you have to play the visiting team sometimes in your own home stadium. Makes no sense. Um, but top of the ninth, Virginia leading 3-2, scored 6 runs, and Mississippi State went through 3 pitchers. It was just a comical, cartoonish mess of an inning for Mississippi State. It took more than 30 minutes to play out, and so that would definitely take your momentum out. You're used to going out there every few minutes. You stay warm. You're sitting in the dugout for that long. You can't go out and throw, the UVA bullpens out in right field. That's a one disadvantage of having that great bullpen out there in right field. You're in the third base dugout. You can't get out there to right field very easily to throw. I guess he could have gone down the left field line. There are some mounds down, a mound and a catcher down there, but didn't do that. So come back in the game, 9-2 lead, gives up a hit to the first guy, gets taken out of the game. 2 runs, 8 hits, 8+ innings, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk. Walks had been killer for this guy this year. 34 and 44 and 2/3 innings coming into the game. It was stellar. I mean, just Brian O'Connor said after the game of his life. He'll always have that game to look back on, especially after this horrible season that he had. So that's the story of UVA baseball this past weekend. I mean, the hitters didn't hit. 4-2 win over Penn in game one, a 5-4 come from behind win over Mississippi State in game two on Saturday night. 9-2 with 6 runs in the ninth. 6 runs coming on 1 ball leaving the infield. There were a bunch of walks. There were a couple ball pitches, an error, a bunt with 1 out. I mean, the pitcher looked like he wanted to throw to third, take the out at first. He turns around, throws the ball down the right field line, 2 run score. UVA opportunistic, taking advantage of those mistakes, 9-2 win. But the team hit 245 this weekend, only 1 home run all weekend from a team that had a team record 115 during the regular season. But they got the wins because of pitching. Gave up 2 runs on Friday, 4 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. Team that had a ERA hovering in the area of the 6.00 mark all season long. Gave up 8 runs, 7 earned in 3 games, pitching to a team ERA in the twos, low two. I think it was 2.23 or something like that. I did the math on that. So hey, great weekend for UVA baseball, winning uncharacteristically for this team with pitching. This team this year with pitching. So Kansas State is a team coming into town. I'm sure they're already in town. It's Wednesday night. The game, we're 48 hours away from the first pitch, 48 hours and a half away as I'm recording this from the first pitch. K-State, I'll give you a quick rundown of the Wildcats. They were one of the last teams to get an NCAA tournament bid. They were a 3 seed in their 4-team regional. A lot of folks thought that maybe they wouldn't get a bid. They were 500 in the Big 12, but lost 3 of 4 to TCU, the team, in fact, that put UVA out of the College World Series last year. TCU, a better record, a better RPI, but didn't get the bid. K-State did. K-State goes from being, one of the last 4 teams to get a bid to winning its regional. The regional they were in was the regional hosted by number 5 seed Arkansas. And they only had to play Arkansas once. They beat them Saturday night. Arkansas lost during the day on Sunday. And Kansas State beat Southeast Missouri State to win the championship in advance. The quick on this, so there's a guy in that dugout that we're familiar with from a few years ago now, but we're familiar with Pete Hughes. Pete Hughes, the Kansas State coach this is his fifth or sixth season. I think it's 6 if got to count the 2020. Started there in 2019. Not a long COVID season for anybody that year, but Hughes he got the job at K-State after being fired at Oklahoma. Hughes got the job at Oklahoma after doing a pretty good job at Virginia Tech from 2007 to 2013. He took Virginia Tech to 2 NCAA tournaments, then left to take the job out there at Oklahoma. took them to one NCAA tournament. You don't in Oklahoma, you don't just go to one tournament in 3 years. That's why he got fired there. This tournament appearance for Kansas State under Hughes is his first there in his 5 years. So, or 6 years. Excuse me. Well, five is probably accurate when you count the COVID year. Um, Pitching staff, not a lot to write home about there. They got through the weekend, pretty much unscathed, and the lineup doesn't have a lot of punch either. But what this Kansas State team will do is they will run 135 stolen bases this year. I'm laughing because that's a ridiculous number. Led all of Power Five. They were 10th overall in the nation in stolen bases this year, and pretty successful from an efficiency standpoint too. Only 24 caught stealings. Um, Brendan Jones is the guy when he gets on base. Watch out for Brendan Jones. He's a 303 hitter, a 923 OPS, 8 home runs, so a little bit of power. 39 steals in 41 attempts. One of 6 guys on this roster with double digits in steals. So the preview there, Kansas State doesn't have a lot of pitching. I think Virginia's going to have a pitching advantage going into this series. This and their pitchers too. Also, the 2 guys that we'll probably see as starters on Friday and Saturday. Owen Boarima gave up his ERA is 5.07 this year. Also gave up 15 home runs and 36 extra base hits in 92 and a third innings. Those are ridiculously bad numbers, especially against a team. Of course, UVA only had 1 home run this past weekend, but loves to hit at the dish and put a lot of balls out of the park this season at home and on the road. The other guy that you'll see likely this weekend, Josh Wintraub, 54 and 2/3 innings, 10 home runs, 27 total extra base hits. So they'll give up home runs. The UVA's hitting should get healthy this weekend. The issue will be when K-State batters get on base. The game's going to slow down. There's going to be a lot of throws to first because this K-State team will run you to death. So should be a good weekend though. Friday 7 o'clock, Saturday, Sunday at 3, Sunday if necessary. Team AFP, Chris Graham and Scott German will be on press row, so to speak. We don't sit in the press box. We're going to hang out. There's a press area on the concourse, and press box at Davenport at Disharoon, the dish at Davenport, whatever you want to call it. Not the best seats in that press box, but on the concourse, right there behind home plate, either side of home plate, great seats. Get to interact with fans. I got to talk with quite a few people this past weekend out at the games, and so I'm looking forward to that again. And hey, if this UVA team gets back to Omaha, I went last year. I'll presume I'll go again. I'm planning to go again this year. So, uh, as long as what I just said about UVA silencing people doesn't get me silenced, this from a credentialing standpoint. No, I'm sure they'll want me to go because I was the only guy from the state of Virginia, outside of the direct employees of UVA athletics, who was sitting in that press box last year in Omaha. It was a great experience. We lost both games last year, but I think this UVA team, now famous last words, as I'm wrapping up this podcast, especially if you're watching or listening after the weekend's over. But I think this weekend, I like UVA's chances against this Kansas State team, and not to diminish the Kansas State at all. They played their way into the field, kind of like the 2015 UVA team played their way into the field. They won their regional. If you can win a regional at this time of year in college baseball, you are a dangerous team. But I like UVA's chances this weekend, and I didn't think this even as of Sunday at 6 o'clock when the first pitch was thrown by Jake Woolfolk. He's probably more around 6'10", with a visiting team, but with Woolfolk emerging as a viable third starter, I like this Virginia team if they get to Omaha. I like this team's chances. I like, Evan Blanco as the number 1 starter. I think I would go with Woolfolk as number 2, and then you've got Joe Savino in a possible, game 3. Joe Savino plus Owen Cody plus Chase Hungate plus, insert name here out of that bullpen. But when you get to the College World Series, it's a microcosm of both the first two rounds that it takes to get to the World Series. The first part of the College World Series is another four-team double elimination tournament, and then the winners of those two four-team brackets play in a championship series, best of three, kind of like the Super Regionals. Um, I like before Woolfolk's gym on Sunday night. I didn't think UVA could go out to Omaha and get through a four-team double elimination a second time and then have enough left over to get back and win two out of three in a World Series, in a championship series situation. I think they got it. I think I'm banking it on one game, but there's no reason to believe that. Woolfolk he's had this stuff all 3 years he's been in Charlottesville. Fastball in the mid 90s, a cutter that has good movement, a slider that is 8 to 10 miles per hour slower than that fastball, and he can locate it well. Um, his issue has been just limiting the mistakes, and he wasn't able to do that a lot this year. He was able to do it great in the Mississippi State win. That's an experience to build off of. So Jay Woolfolk, I think, has got me thinking this UVA team can get through this weekend, and they can get through two other weekends out in Omaha. I hope I'm out there for a while. I hope I get to go, and I hope I'm out there for a while. Um, so we will have coverage. There's more, and of course, there's a lot on the website already, and we're gonna have more coming up with everything you want to know and more about the UVA team. I know a lot of folks don't follow baseball closely until this time of year. Um, basketball and football have your attention even now. But now that UVA is in the Super Regionals, which this is the ninth time in 15 years, we're kind of used to this, right? I got a nice feature story on the platoon at third base with Luke Hansen and Eric Becker. A couple nice features on Jay Woolfolk. I'll have one coming up tomorrow as I'm recording this. It's going to be on Thursday. On Jacob Ferentz, the catcher, who transferred in from D3 Salisbury, and has been just a blessing in disguise as far as that goes. A guy who didn't have any offers out of high school, wasn't used very much as a freshman at the D3 level. Saw his playing time increase as he was there. Now he's a grad senior and putting up huge numbers in the ACC and part of a team that is 2 days away from being in the College World Series. So we'll have something on Jacob. Trying to think what else. We'll see what else we get into as far as that goes too. We got 48 hours to get through until the first pitch on Friday night. So of course, then Friday night we'll do a live coverage thing on the website. We'll have post game and a lot more. So let's see. Well, if you have any questions for me, any comments, you want to tell me you think I'm a lunatic, that's fine. A lot of people do that. Email me at chris@augustafreepress.com.